Good morning, All Saints family. Happy 7th Sunday of Easter. Also, we'll be celebrating Ascension Day. That was on Thursday. And I hope all of you are doing well wherever you are watching this from. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. So our reading today in Acts is what I'm going to focus on. It really sets up the story for Pentecost, which we celebrate next week. Pentecost is one of my favorite moments in the church year, and I'm really sad that we can't celebrate it together in person. But we will have many Pentecost celebrations in the future together. This story, if you were reading and following along in our readings from Acts, may seem kind of like an addendum to last week or a preface to next week and may seem unimportant, but I think there's some important things for us to consider. First, before we get there, I just want to remember those days when I was a kid or those days when I was a parent with young children, even now as they're older adolescents. Those moments when you're on a trip and you ask that question or your children ask that question, are we there yet? I'm sure you've all had that experience. I remember in my days of youth ministry, my students would often ask on long trips, are we there yet? And I got into the habit of just saying 20 minutes, no matter if we were 5 hours away or pulling into the parking lot. Eventually they got the idea and would stop asking me every hour, are we there yet? But we've all had to wait on things, right? We've all had to wait on good things, whether it be applying for a new job or waiting to hear if the offer you put in on a house was accepted, waiting for a child to be born. All of those things are wonderful things that we wait on and sometimes we get impatient about. There's also those things that are not so great that we wait on, whether it be a diagnosis, or waiting for the hammer to drop on some part of our life when we know something bad is going to happen and we anxiously await it. Right now, we are spending a prolonged time of waiting, as you all are well aware. Waiting and the coronavirus are really they've almost become synonymous. We're all desperate for this pandemic to be over, and we all, at least in the back of our head, are saying those same words, are we there yet? There's certainly signs of our patience running thin. I know last weekend back home on Tybee Island, they reported 25,000 guests at the beach, which is unbelievable. That is a record day for this time of year. I know last weekend my family and I went up to Croton Point just to kind of walk around, and we're kind of surprised, or maybe wasn't so surprised, that the parking lot was mostly full. Our patience running thin and our lack of sticking with the plan is kind of a cautionary tale. I know there was an article that came out this week about 2 churches in Georgia that decided to open up and have in-person worship again, and 2 weeks later, they recognized they had so many new cases of COVID in their congregations that they've already stopped doing worship again in person. So Thursday was Ascension Day. Ascension Day happens 40 days after Easter. 40 days in the Bible, when we are talking about periods of time, all of those different numbers, 3, 7, 12, 40, they all have significance. And with 40 days is usually a time of preparation. We think about Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. We think about the 40 days that Noah spent on the ark. Often 40 days means it is a time of preparation. And that's certainly what we have done. That's certainly what Jesus was doing with the disciples from Easter to Pentecost, preparing their hearts for the next phase of their mission. So in our story today, the disciples were gathered with Jesus in this room, and Jesus was telling them that very soon that he was leaving and that they would be baptized with the Holy Spirit. And they asked that same question that our kids ask on a trip. Are we there yet? Jesus, does that mean it's finally the time when God is going to restore the kingdom of Israel? And when they say that, they mean to that glory period of when David was king. And Jesus answers them, as he often does, with a bit of a sidestep. He tells them first, it's not for you to know. The time of these things happening, that is God's plan. That's not for you to know. And then he gives them this kind of strange answer that I'm sure that they were not ready to hear yet. He says, when the Holy Spirit comes, you will be bringing about restoration and healing, not just to Israel and Judea, but also to our nearest enemies in Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. It was something that they weren't ready to hear. It's certainly something that they were ready to hear come a week from now, but we'll get there. The disciples, even having been with Jesus all of this time, seeing all of the miracles, seeing the things that he had done, watching him be executed and then rise again and stand with them, they still had a very small vision. They still had those inklings of that small Jesus Messiah in a box that was going to restore Israel as some sort of military power. And Jesus, in that one sentence, explodes that tiny box of a vision. And then the Holy Spirit comes next week, and we'll talk about that next week. So my question for us today, as we finish our preparation for Pentecost, as we prepare our hearts and our minds to be reminded what it means to be church, what is our vision for ourselves as disciples? What is our vision as the church of all saints, as one body of disciples? But most importantly, where is that vision too small? Where in our hearts do we need Jesus to come in and explode our tiny box of a vision and allow the Holy Spirit to take us in places we never thought we would go? That is my prayer for us today. Have a wonderful week. We will see each other again soon.